Your Excellencies, members of the diplomatic corps that we have sent out into the world, DG Mohai, top management of the department, representatives of the Office of the President, the panel of advisors. We now start the program, and the President will be addressing you. For some reason, our programs always start with an introduction of the President. Nobody here does not know who the President is, where he comes from, what he stands for, what he looks like, and what he's probably going to be saying to you. Mr. President, without much ado, we're delighted to have you at DECO. We're delighted that you created time in your very busy schedule to come and talk to us and address us on issues that are very close to your heart and very close to what will take our government into a trajectory which we would like to see. We would like you to engage us on all of those issues. And we hope, Mr. President, that you will allow us time in the end to have an interactive discussion with yourself. This is the first time that heads of mission will have the opportunity to interact with you, and therefore we will limit their time. They're not allowed to have more than 1 minute, and I'm certain all of them would want to be recognized by the President. But thereafter, Mr. President, we will leave the room and go and take a family photo with yourself. Mr. President, we give the floor to you. And I would like you please to stand up and welcome the President to the podium.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's be seated, please. Program Director and Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ms. Lindy Wesulu, Deputy Ministers Llewellyn Landers and Regina Mhaule. I saw some members of the Portfolio Committee here, and it's wonderful to have you here as well. Members of the Ministerial Review panel, a number of former ministers and deputy ministers who are here, and all ambassadors, and ladies and gentlemen. It's always a great pleasure for me to come to this wonderful building called or named after our icon, O.R. Tambo, but also to interact with colleagues who are involved in one of the most important tasks that we have as a country and as a nation. Because this gathering brings together all of you, our envoys, who represent our country, who are the face and the voice of our country all over the world. So it's always most wonderful to have this moment. And I know you come back home with a great deal of glee and joy, because some of you come back to have the opportunity to replenish your acha, your mleqwa, and all those wonderful things. I'm not going to name the country that I visited when one of our ambassadors pulled out a bottle of acha as we were having a meal, and I said, wow, even in this European high-level capital, you are still able to bring your acha, he says. And they said, well, whenever I go back home, I make sure that I replenish. So you don't have to confess what you have come back to replenish, but we know that you have come back home, not only for this, I'm afraid to say, Minister, they've come back home for a lot more than what you can imagine. Allow me to take this opportunity to thank you all for the work that you continue to do on our behalf, on behalf of the people of South Africa, around the world where you are deployed. And whenever I get the opportunity to interface with some of you in the countries that we visit, I always find and get really energized with the knowledgeable information that you have about the countries where you are posted and about a whole range of things that are germane to the countries that you are deployed to. So it's really, truly wonderful. And you may think that it means very little, but it does. When we travel around the world and we meet you and you give us in-depth briefings on the work that you're doing, we are most enthralled and we are most overjoyed. We strive to advance our national interests in the global landscape, as you well know. A global landscape that is in constant movement and flux, where political and social and economic forces beyond our control have a direct bearing on the lives of our people and the efforts that we continue to make life better for our people as a whole. Like any other country, South Africa is not immune to the tremors and, if you like, economic earthquakes in the global economy and the shifts in geopolitics. And we see it on an ongoing basis. And we have, as a country, to be on our toes continuously and have to analyze every event as it unfolds, because if we do not do so, it could have a negative impact on us. And you know that very well. In the midst of global uncertainty, we are fortunate to have at the helm of our diplomatic service an experienced, and may I add, a very capable corps of people who can be relied upon, people who can be trusted, and people who have the capacity, like all of you, who represent our country out there. And we therefore steadfastly know that you promote our progressive international agenda as our representatives. In all our efforts, we are guided, as you well know, and as a country have always been guided by one strategic objective or other. And when we were in struggle, we all know we were guided by the Freedom Charter. And the Freedom Charter continues to guide us in most of the things that we do. And in fact, in my office, I have a chart that clearly delineates areas of the Freedom Charter where we have made progress, where we have stalled, and where we are yet to make progress, and a time frame that is also set out. But right now, we are guided by the National Development Plan. National Development Plan 2030, which has been broadly embraced and accepted by all our people, bar just a few here and there, and even then, they all only have complaints with one or two chapters of the plan. But more broadly, the NDP is our lodestar to 2030. And it is that that drives us and provides a roadmap for unleashing the capabilities of our people, the energies of our people, with a view of ensuring that we have a growing and an inclusive economy. But it also is a lodestar and a guide to help us build capabilities amongst our people and enhance also, most important area, the ability of our state. A state that has seen a lot of challenges, particularly in the past 10 years, where the state in a number of areas has seen so many challenges and has in some of them been weakened. At the same time, we wholly identify with the aspirations that are set out in Agenda 2063 of the African Union and its vision for an integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa. That too is our lodestar. It's a lodestar that we have completely embraced because it seeks to achieve an Africa that is driven by its own citizens, representing a dynamic force in the international arena. South Africa and its fortunes are intricately linked to those of our continent. And this was so clearly and well set out as early as 1961 by the first African Nobel laureate, our former President Chief Albert Luthuli, when he received the Nobel Prize in Sweden, and he said, "I accept this also as an honor, not only to South Africa, but for the whole continent of Africa. To this continent, Mother Africa," he said. And in many ways, that set out what should be the agenda of our foreign policy and our approach, that as South Africa, we will always seek to put Africa in the forefront and promote the development of Africa as much as we possibly can, as many of us will have seen us doing in a number of iterations that we've been involved in. It was the people of Africa who extended, as we all know, the hand of friendship, of solidarity, during the darkest days of our lives, during the days of apartheid. And today it is African countries who are our valued allies and trading partners. And if on the international arena we ever need any form of support, we always know that the anchor of that support will come from Africa, our own continent. So that confirms our approach, therefore, to ensuring that Mother Africa in our dealings in the international arena should be in the forefront. Because when Africa falters, South Africa also will falter. But when Africa prospers, our own country will prosper as well. So in many ways, we will be acting in our own self-interest to promote our own interests as South Africa, but in doing so, knowing that against the broader canvas, we are also promoting the interests of our continent. As we do this, we are also guided by the words of Kwame Nkrumah, who said, "Divided we are weak, united, Africa could become one of the greatest forces for good in the world." And if we put that in the background of whatever we do, then we are able then to have the proper drivers that can enable us to promote the interests of Africa and make sure that as we drive our achievements towards attaining the NDP goals, but we also drive the 2063 agenda objectives as well. We all know that this year we marking the centenaries of two titans of our liberation struggle, Utata Nelson Mandela and Mama Albertina Sisulu. And as I was coming in, I'm wearing a very nice badge, which I robbed from somebody who is not a South African. They were wearing this, and I said, "How come you are wearing a badge I should be wearing?" And I took it away from them. It's a beautiful badge depicting the handsome face of Utata Nelson Mandela. I wish I had another one depicting the beautiful face of Umama or Albertina Sisulu. This has been a great year, just in terms of celebrating 2 lives. And we all know that, the United Nations, I don't know whether they were cajoled, whether they were put in a corner to celebrate Tata Nelson Mandela's centenary. Ambassador there and officials, and indeed our minister and deputy ministers did a fantastic job in getting the whole world to recognize Nelson Mandela and the work that he has done. And we continue to recognize what he has done, and Mama Albertina Sisulu have also done. Now, as we reflect on their respective legacies, we are ever mindful of the sacrifices that they and many others made for our liberation. And we are now in a milieu where a number of the comrades that they worked with are leaving us. Recently, we had to bury comrade Stalin Mchali, and Mamam Simang is also going to be buried soon, and Ambassador Chikane is also going to be buried soon. We're going through this very sad period where we are now saying goodbye to people who've played such an important role in our struggle. But that is life. But it should not end there, because they continue to inspire us. They continue to get us to look at what they stood for, the value system, the principles that they underpinned their lives with. We carry a weighty responsibility to ensure that their sacrifices were not in vain, and to realize their vision of a South Africa free from discrimination, inequality, and want. We need to continue with the work that they did. Although we have registered notable progress, as we all know, in the past 24 years of our democracy, we still have to grapple with a number of problems and challenges. And the triple challenges that we still grapple with, and you see them as you go throughout our country. You still see poverty, inequality still dogs us, and unemployment is in our face on an ongoing basis. This is our legacy from apartheid misrule, but it is also our legacy from some of the missteps that we ourselves have been involved in over the past 24 years. But the good thing is that we know what the legacy of the past is all about, but we're also now becoming more and more alive to what we have done in terms of our own mistakes and missteps. And the task now is to correct everything that has been done wrong in the past and what we have also done wrong. But against this very big canvas, we can say, as a country, we have made tremendous progress over the past 24 years. No mistaking about it. We have moved this country forward in a very determined way. The South Africa we inherited in 1994 is a very different South Africa today in 2018. Whether they like it or not, we have made progress. Now, our challenges are known, and they can be summed up in these triple challenges. And we are not sitting on our backside doing nothing about them. We know that at the center of what we need to do to change the lives of our people is to grow our economy and to make sure that our economy grows on an inclusive basis. Our economy is anchored in cooperation really between business, government, and civil society and labor. This is the medium, if you like, the happy medium that we have determined needs to be addressed and worked on so that we can have a social compact that will enable us to create this platform from which we can then grow our economy and address these three challenges. We want to get our economy going following a period of stagnant growth. And we must admit that the past 9 to 10 years, the performance of our economy has been lackluster. A number of heads of states, as one meets them, they often ask, why are you only growing at 1%, less than 1%, and so forth? And the reasons are multifaceted. And they are the type of reasons that we need to delve into. Some of them are obviously globally crafted or created, but some of them are our own mistakes. We want to regain public and investor trust and thereby unlock private capital and promote investment. Above all, we want to see our people secure and have a meaningful employment to ensure that all South Africans benefit from economic growth. In just 2 days from now, as you all know, and I'm rather glad that some of you will be able to participate. It would have been wonderful to have all of you participating, but it's not possible. But a number of you will be able to participate. In those next 2 days, we are going to open the South African Investment Conference in Johannesburg, which is a critical intervention to showcase to the world and to our own people the opportunities for both domestic and foreign investors. The conference is an integral part of our very ambitious goal to try and raise $100 billion. Now, when we said $100 billion, some people mistook it for 100 billion rand, and we said, no, don't miscount. We're talking about 1.4 trillion rand that we want to be invested in our economy. And admittedly, we want most of it to come from our own country so that South Africans invest in their own economy. After leaving you here, I'm going to have lunch with a number of CEOs and chairs of big corporates in our country. And in a way, I'm going to try and put their feet to the fire and say, the platform is in trouble. We want companies to commit to invest, largely because many of them have been recording unbelievably high returns, and they have not been reinvesting. And they have a number of reasons, and we'll deal with some of them, why they have not really been investing. And we're going to have an engagement with them because it is when local businesses invest in their own economy that we are able to attract investors from outside the country. This conference will discuss opportunities in a number of sectors in our economy. Infrastructure is going to be top of mind. We're going to discuss agriculture, minerals, manufacturing, which is really the flywheel of any economy, transportation, energy, ICT, tourism, and you name it, film, and everything else. This Heads of Mission Conference, therefore, takes place, in my view, at an important moment, for it is you, our diplomats, who must play a pivotal role in driving the message that South Africa is indeed open for business. And I know you do it on an ongoing basis. And it fills me with a great deal of joy as I go around various countries where you are posted and hear you talk up the South African story. And today, your being here when this conference is taking place, yes, gives you the opportunity to have a greater and a deeper insight in what we want to do in terms of opening the country for investment. Because as our ambassadors, our envoys, our high commissioners, in the end, you are out there. You're out there to campaign for investments in your own home country. And I give you great applause because many of you, if all of you in fact, are preoccupied with precisely that, winning every little dollar to bring back to South Africa. And I thank you for that. Thank you very much. Because it is our missions abroad that are leading our economic diplomacy that need to ensure that the outcomes of the conference are conveyed around the world, and that they are also responsible for assisting the expansion of trade and investment links with our partner countries. So this investment conference follows the successful job summit that we had recently, which you obviously will have been briefed about, where more than 70 interventions, and this was a most fantastic sort of summit to oversee, because we brought together, as you well know, business, labor, communities, as well as government. And my message to them was very simple. Let us stop being adversarial. The job challenge in our country does not need us to fight amongst ourselves. We must stop grandstanding against each other. We must just focus on what we need to do to create the jobs that are needed to reduce the level of unemployment in our country. And once that message sunk in, the social partners at NEDLAC were then able to buckle down and start going through the various interventions that we could embark upon to create jobs. And believe it or not, they themselves, without even me standing over their shoulders, insisting that this is what they should do, they said, we have identified 70 interventions that can be embarked upon to create jobs, but also to protect existing jobs. And they finally emerged with a framework agreement which they adopted, which focuses on empowering the women of our country and the youth of our country, but also stimulating demand in the local economy. Because one of the key problems that our economy faces is lack of demand, or lackluster demand. And this is what has driven us into the technical recession, apart from obviously the performance of agriculture, which was at a low level. So promoting and generating demand in our economy is top of mind. And they themselves, as the various social partners said, we need to promote and generate demand in our economy, because when we do generate demand, then manufacturing then takes off. We're then able to even have value-added products which will be demanded by the market. So the summit also agreed that one of the key things we should focus on as a nation is the Buy South Africa approach, and that it should be significantly upscaled, and that we should take advantage of the new opportunities in Africa as well through the regional and continental integration. And the near slogan that came up was, South African goods first. Started toying around with, do we say South Africa first? Like some people say, my country first. We said, no, maybe that won't have a wonderful ring. Maybe because you are exposed to so many other countries, ability to come up with wonderful winning pay lines and slogans, you can suggest something. But the Buy South Africa slogan gained a lot of currency there. And we are actually saying the more we raise the level of consciousness amongst all of us as South Africans to buy South Africa, the more we will be able to create jobs. And I even challenged some of them, particularly those from the unions. I said, just check next time you put on a fancy t-shirt with a slogan. And even if you're ANC, if you're going to put on a T-shirt with my handsome face on it, just check where this was made. Because truth be told, colleagues, there are times when we've donned all these T-shirts and all these paraphernalia, and when you look at the label, you find that it's made elsewhere. It's not made in South Africa. And we say, why don't we buy South African? So we're beginning now the process, and we want to make sure that this level of consciousness keeps rising, that people must become more and more aware that we need to buy South Africa. So as part of our investment-friendly approach, where we want to create a conducive climate to make South Africa an economy where people can invest, we are focusing on addressing the structural weaknesses in our economy. And there have been many. Because we need to do that to rebuild investor confidence in our economy, to restore our wonderful capability on a number of fronts. We need to address, and particularly things that have not only been raised by other people, but things that we ourselves know are a problem. For instance, we need to restore good governance in public institutions and create a supportive environment for those who want to invest and those who have invested already. And it's a simple thing and a bit difficult if you sit back and reflect on it a bit. The concept of ensuring that there's good governance is not only at the presidency. It's not only at the various departments. It's not only in DERCO. It cascades downwards to the provinces, to the local government. And in the end, if we want to make our country conducive for investment, it is at the local government level where the Auditor General has said there have been failures of governance and financial management that we need to address. And he has come up with a report that tells us that the majority of our local government entities are dysfunctional. And now if you begin to sit back and think about an investor, will an investor easily go and invest in a dysfunctional municipality where they know that if their operations, be it a factory or whatever, requires a lot of water, there won't be the water that they need? Where they know that the electricity that they require will not be there? Where they know that the licenses or permits that they need will not come on time? And if they want to expand, they will wait for 3 years before they get licenses from the local authority and so forth. Because in the end, investments happen at the local level. They don't happen at the union buildings. And that's precisely where the issue of good governance has to be addressed. And that is where we're now focusing on, because that is where we need to ensure that we repair the bad things that have happened in the past, as identified also by the Auditor General. South Africa's advanced infrastructure has long been one of the country's strongest attractions to investors. When they look at the whole continent, they say, you have, a really wonderful infrastructure network. As part of the work that we must undertake now to stimulate growth and create employment, we are ensuring that we address even that. Our infrastructure investment tapered off quite a lot. And many of you will know that leading up to 2010, our infrastructure investment was like at its height. But now it has tapered off, and a country that does not invest in its infrastructure in terms of rolling out new infrastructure and maintenance is a country that has decided not to grow. Now, we want to reignite the growth of our economy through infrastructure. Just yesterday, President Xi Jinping opened a 55-kilometer bridge that links Hong Kong, Macau, and the mainland and all that. And that is a demonstration that this is a country that is going somewhere. Now, that's precisely what we want to do here. We want to demonstrate that we are going somewhere, and that is why we're going to be focusing and putting in 400 billion rand as part of the MTEF infrastructure budget into the new infrastructure fund that we've set up. We've decided that to bring greater focus on infrastructure, we must set up this fund. Countries that have been really successful set up infrastructure fund, and through that they've been able to invite the private sector through utilization of a number of instruments to invest in infrastructure and to promote PPPs and a whole number of measures that are possible. So this is what we've now decided to do, setting up this big, mega infrastructure fund, and already the 400 billion rand is going to be channeled into this fund. This will be used to address, yes, the infrastructure gaps that we have in areas such as roads, water infrastructure, schools, human settlements, and public transport, and additional resources from development finance institutions, multilateral development banks, and the private lenders and investors will also be leveraged through this fund. Over the past few months, we have already achieved a number of milestones in our quest for improved investment, resulting in a number of ways in renewed levels of business confidence. The business confidence is riding, it was really at a low ebb. But we are working towards raising it more and more. For example, we have initiated changes, as you all know, to our visa regime to attract more skilled workers and tourists. And these are some of the issues that we've gleaned from our interaction with business and also as we interact with labor. And the good thing with this moment that we are at now is that as we build this compact, our relationships with our partners, social partners, is improving on an ongoing basis. Business, labor, and communities feel that they can engage, they can talk to us, and they can bring forward suggestions which we will listen to. Processes to restore confidence in our institutions and organizations of governance are also underway, and we are investigating and prosecuting cases of corruption. As many of you will have noticed, we're now moving forward to appoint the next NDPP. A panel has been put in place. It's going to interview a plethora of people who are possible candidates. And in the end, they will select a few names which the president will then appoint. And we're hoping that the appointee will be a person who, one, will not be captured. Two, a person who will make sure that our, criminal justice system. Now, truth be told, that is the last person we ever want to be captured. We want them to be as slippery from the hands of capturers as possible, because they have an important role to play. Now, we are addressing that, because one of the challenges, as you all know, that we face was corruption. Corruption has and had become so endemic in our country as to get us to almost begin to be a failing state. But we are arresting that. We are turning that around, and the Zondo Commission is doing its work wonderfully, and the truth of what has happened in the past is beginning to come out. And I can assure you, we are going to clean up. Cleanup is what we are going to do. Now, one of the areas where the cleanup is necessary is in our state-owned enterprises. And they are being overhauled, and the message is very clear. People who've been involved in malfeasance and wrongdoing need to be accountable. And that process is not a process where we are hunting people down. It is just saying, be accountable for the wrongs that have happened, because our state-owned enterprises continue to play a key role in our economy. Up to 30% of our economy, of our GDP rather, is driven by state-owned enterprises. Our ability to generate foreign investment in our country depends in large measure on the image of our country abroad, which is one of the core responsibilities of our diplomats. Yes, I know, when our image is damaged here, you have a really difficult task to explain some of the wrong things that are happening here. And I can hear the murmurings. I know you have a difficult task. Now, we want to make your job easier. We want you to be able to explain the South African story much easily and in a much more relaxed fashion. Not ducking and diving and having to explain the unexplainable. We want you to be more focused. So, as we do this, we know that we must also do it for you, because you are our window. You are our mouthpieces to the rest of the world. So we must generate good messages, a really good narrative that you can project and broadcast to the world. And as we do all this, as we deal with the perceptions about our country and its government and its economy, we need to work to correct what has gone wrong in the past. It is important that we should not overlook the challenges that we have, emerging from a period of great difficulty, a period which almost on a daily basis, as each page is turned, we begin to realize how difficult the past years have really been. But it is clear that our democracy is resilient. Many democracies would have buckled under the weight of what we have gone through. But we haven't. We are still standing. We are still standing as a democracy and a country. And the important thing, notwithstanding where we've been, we are addressing the challenges, the immediate challenges that we face, and that we are establishing a foundation for lasting growth and fundamental transformation. And in a number of ways, many of us, as we go through all what we've gone through, we say, never, never, and never again shall South Africa have this. Now you remember what Madiba said, never and never and never again at his inauguration shall South Africa be the skunk of the world again when it comes to the degradation of human rights. But today we are saying never and never and never again shall corruption be so endemic in our country. We don't want it. So we should locate the South African narrative within the context of a continent that is on the rise. It is estimated, as we all know, that over the next 20 years, the working population of Africa will increase to more than 1 billion. Ours is a young, active, and increasingly connected continent with favorable demographics, high productivity potential, and ideal positioning as a springboard into the rest of Africa. Our country, therefore, is an attractive destination for growth-seeking investors. and a number of investors who keep coming to our country say, we want to set up our headquarters here in South Africa so that we can use that as a launch pad for the rest of the African continent. And interestingly, a number of countries on the continent as well keep saying to us as we meet them, South Africa needs to be the anchor and the real linchpin for investments. We want South Africa, to furl its wings out to the rest of the continent, and we want to make sure that South Africa succeeds. And this is what they wish for us, and that is what we want to live up to. Ranked 61 out of 147 in the World Economic Forum's latest Global Competitiveness Report, and as the continent's second biggest economy, South Africa, yes, offers investors the stability of a well-regulated and developed country, an effective legal environment, cost competitiveness, and reliable infrastructure. Our banking system, as we all know, is solid despite what we've been through with VBS, which you might have heard about. We're well capitalized, well regulated, internationally respected as well. There's no doubt that we have a very solid base to work from. Our platform is solid, and we are buttoning it down and making it even more solid. The advent of globalization heralded a new future that is highly connected and interdependent. This means that there are a vast set of issues that obviously that we need to deal with, from climate change to cross-border crime that cannot be addressed by individual countries acting alone. It is only through collective effort, supported by multilateral institutions like the UN, the WTO, and a number of others, that we have been able to address some of our world's most complex challenges. As we witness the rise of extreme nationalism as it is spreading, and almost right-wingism, if one can call it that, in some parts of the world, it is clear that the need for an effective rules-based world and multilateral system is greater than ever before. The very essence of the UN Charter is respect for international law, international rule of law, and the principles of international justice as we seek as a global collective to live in harmony, in peace, maintain international understanding and security and respect for human rights for all. Good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law is also amongst the aspirations of Agenda 2063. If we are to safeguard our security and prosperity as a country, if we are also as a continent to silence the guns that still rage, we have to work to consolidate rather than erode international rule of law. It is international law that informs the exercise and the limits of the use of state power, and that enforces cooperation over conflict and collaboration over confrontation. The challenge before us is to transform global politics from a power-based hierarchy to a rules-based international system where each country can know that it can advance and protect its national interests without provoking animosity. And this is what is cut out for our country. And a number of countries in the world expect South Africa to stand up and surge to the fore and be the torchbearer of all these very important values. As we go around the world, they look at us with renewed interest and expecting that South Africa, yes, will come up to the plate. And in many ways, that responsibility also rests on your shoulders because you are the torchbearers of South Africa wherever you are deployed in the world. And the centrality of the UN to South Africa's foreign engagement is based both on a strong belief in collective and equitable global governance, but also because of the UN's role in the fight against apartheid. South Africa enthusiastically embraces its responsibility as an active member of the UN. It was a joy for me to be at the UN for the first time. I was one of the new ones there. Didn't even know where the stage was and what it looked like. But fortunately, I finally was led to it. But it was great to be participating on that world stage and also to be transmitting a very, very forward-looking, progressive message from our country and from our continent. This is particularly the case in relation to the UN as South Africa prepares to enter the Security Council as a non-permanent member from 2019. Minister Sisulu and DG Ambassador were there, his former DG were there and going through their own training steps and in attendance, seeing how it is all happening. And lo and behold, the meeting was chaired by none other than Donald Trump himself. That would have been quite a spectacle to watch. Our election there provides us with an opportunity to align the work of the UN with that of the AU and to promote the positions we have adopted when we campaigned for this non-permanent seat, including the priorities of Agenda 2063. And let me pause here and say thank you to all of you without exception, for the fantastic work that you did to campaign that we should win that seat. Thank you very much, and give yourself a round of applause. I know that many of you spent sleepless nights. You were campaigning and cajoling a number of countries, and we got the number of votes that we got due to the work and the campaigning effort that you put in. Now, this is our third term on the UN Security Council. It should build on President Mandela's legacy of working towards a peaceful, just, and prosperous world. And that is what should underpin the approach that we bring to the UN Security Council. We must honor his legacy by serving as a bridge builder, bringing divergent perspectives and seeking peaceful solution to any conflict. We must continue to campaign for the reform of the Security Council. And this we've got to do and keep doing it ad nauseum so that they get the message very, very clearly. It was a joy to sit down with President Buhari, and both of us found that our views converge, and we said we must keep on harping on these reforms for the UN Security Council. The current formation is antiquated, as we all know. It is not only unrepresentative, it is also prejudicial to developing and smaller states. The Security Council, therefore, remains a primary international organ mandated to promote international peace and security. It is essential that it remains true to its mandate and moves beyond the paralysis brought on by the geopolitical interests of a few member states. The only way this can happen is if world leaders, including those who represent the permanent members of the Security Council, are bold and courageous and commit to enlarging the Council urgently. Failure to do so will encourage states to start acting unilaterally with disastrous consequences for everyone. As South Africa, we need to pay particular attention to the intersection of the work of the Security Council and that of the Peace and Security Council of the United of the African Union. We should encourage greater cooperation and collaboration to ensure a common approach to ending conflict on the continent. We will need to continue to be more engaged with ongoing challenges on the continent in countries such as Lesotho, the DRC, Madagascar, South Sudan, Somalia, the Central African Republic, Mali, and Libya. The African Union has established and consolidated a comprehensive peace and security architecture. The architecture is based on a paradigm that recognizes preventative diplomacy as central to eradicating conflicts on our continent. We will use our term on the UN Security Council as we must, as we should, to highlight and advance the cause of the Palestinians and the Sahrawi peoples. Peace and security in Africa is linked to its economic and social development. The most effective way to ensure lasting stability in the end is to achieve economic growth that benefits all of Africa's people. At the same time, peace and stability is a necessary condition for faster and more inclusive growth. South Africa played an active role in remodeling the OAU into the African Union, specifically with the aim of strengthening Africa's ability to resolve its own intra-Africa conflicts. We will continue to support the institutional reforms of the AU to ensure that it retains the ability and agility in an ever-changing and complex world. We are resolute that such reforms should conform to the AU Constitutive Act and not betray the Pan-African philosophy of the founding fathers and mothers and leaders of the AU. Your Excellencies, on the multilateral level, this year marks the 10th anniversary of the G20 being held at summit level. The meeting this year takes place in the context of an uncertain, increased unilateralism and protectionist world, particularly being propagated by some members of the G20. South Africa will continue to use its membership of the G20 to promote inclusive growth and development and support the Argentinian presidency in their efforts towards consensus building and fair and sustainable development. I will be departing for Berlin later this week. I'm told I depart on Sunday, and I will participate in the G20 Africa conference hosted by Chancellor Merkel, where we will reflect on the G20 Africa partnership, inclusive of the compact with Africa that seeks to enhance private sector investment in Africa's infrastructure. Earlier this year, we successfully, as you all know, hosted the BRICS countries. And as we hosted them, we broadened the participation and brought together a number of countries on the continent, but more especially our own SADC neighbors. And we established the foundation for a decade of greater cooperation, development, and progress. In addition to reaffirming our shared commitment to multilateralism and the interests of the countries of the Global South, we developed an ambitious agenda for cooperation on the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the opportunities provided by rapid advances in technology. We are also taking the FOCAC grouping towards a strategic partnership in which China will be a significant partner in developing African infrastructure and promoting regional integration. South Africa will also be chairing, as many of you will know, the Indian Ocean Rim Association, which we view as the preeminent regional organization linking Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and Australasia. We will focus on uniting the diverse countries that constitute the association behind the agenda of peace and stability and sustainable development. We exist, as we all know, in an ever-changing and complex global environment. As a country, as a brand, as a trade partner, and as an investment destination, our country has what it takes to compete on the world stage. It is up to us to make sure that we do indeed take full advantage of the opportunities that exist for the benefit of all our people. All we need to do is to fix the number of things that we have already identified, make sure that we streamline everything, the way we function, the way government functions, and address the needs of our people. We have emerged from a very difficult decade, as I was saying, which has dampened confidence and slowed our progress. As we undertake the critical task of a renewal and rebuilding, and may I add, unity of our people as well, because that's another important task, to ensure that we promote social cohesion amongst all South Africans in promoting the values and the principles set out in our Constitution, and we move on with the task of nation building. And as we do that, we draw strength from the knowledge that we do indeed stand on great shoulders. We have a beautiful country, the most beautiful country in the world, by the way. Absolutely the most beautiful country in the world. And we are the one country that continues to have great memories of our past leaders. And those are the shoulders that we stand on. And we should continue to stand on. Tata Madiba, Mama Albertina Sisulu, Walter Sisulu, Govan Beki, you name them. They're all there. They stand out there, they look at us, and they continue to inspire us, and they should continue inspiring what we do. Their examples have shown us that we can triumph over adversity, because they did triumph over adversity. They did, under very difficult odds. And ours should almost be like a walk through the park. They taught us that race will never be won. The race will never be won until all South Africans are able to lead lives of dignity, in peace, and in prosperity. Their lives provide ample evidence of the limitless potential of the human spirit to persevere and to prevail. Working together as South Africans and in concert with our partners across the globe, where all of you are posted, we can be certain that we will indeed build a better Africa, a better world, and most importantly, a much better South Africa. I thank you.
Mr. President, thank you so much. I counted the number of times Mr. President said, "This is very clear." Mr. President, your message is very clear. Another round of applause from all of you. Mr. President, this is the second time that you've come to us, and we're very grateful that you have prioritized us. For most of you who are here, you would not have met the President when he was here. This is the first department he came to after his installation as President. And we had a very engaging time with the President. He came to encourage us, to ensure that our image abroad is one that we would be proud of. He came to encourage us, to ensure that we can revamp our systems. Most of the things that he has said now today, we are beginning to do that, Mr. President, you'll be glad to know. But thank you for prioritizing us. Mr. President has indicated that he came here with a lapel of Madiba. And I was greatly embarrassed because he called me aside and he said, you know, the plates, you know, the under plates that you put your plates on, the gold thingamidu. He says, you know, being artistic as he believes he is, he would have used those and put in the center a picture of Madiba, so that, oh, and Masisulu. And I felt extremely embarrassed because it had never occurred to me. But the lapel, Mr. President, I want to assure you, we have taken note of what you've said. Each one of our ambassadors, high commissioners here will go home with a lapel of Nelson Mandela. You will at all times, for official purposes, formal purposes, please put that lapel on. For the women, we will make sure that it is a magnetic one so that your silk is not torn by
Thank you, Minister.
Your Excellencies, by now, if we had a model in our diplomatic school on economics for South Africa's economy, we would be getting 90% each one of us. We are better poised, better placed to go out to the world and explain what our economy is and in need of, and what we're doing to ensure that we can provide jobs for our young people. Mr. President, I am certain now that the heads of mission would want to interact with you. We will, as I indicated, limit it to 1 minute. I was here yesterday, and some heads of mission needed to make sure that I recognize they were here. We will have a photo with the president, and we will make sure when we send out the photo that we put a ring around your face, that you were there. So in the interest of time, what we need from the president is his interaction, which is very important. We, as the administration here, have had that opportunity, so I'm hoping that the administration will not be raising their hands. We give this opportunity to heads of mission to interact with the president and allow the president to respond to that interaction with yourselves. I now open the floor to recognize the hands of those. You will, of course, stand up and introduce yourself so that the president knows who it is that he is responding to. I recognize all right, we have some guests here, and we would like to thank them for covering us so faithfully, and we would like now that they allow us to have our discussions in camera.
Yeah. In-house. In-house. In-house.
In camera, but the camera is
Yes. The cameras can leave us. Elulu uthethile izolo fithi namhlanje kufanele uzibhange uthethile izolo uthethe kuminista izolo uthethe kuminista wambiza ngegama nyani nguye nje okubizileyo ne
Ngahleka.
oh hayi ke ndiyayiqonda ke ngoku ngoba niyazana as MPs
Yazisusa ne?